Good day, students. Welcome to your presentation for Adolescent Literature and Reading Support, Year 3, Semester 2. This is the presentation that you can use to prepare for assignments and examinations in the year 2022 specifically. I am Melinda Coffey. As you will see on your slide, I'm the tutor for this subject. My telephone number is there as well as my email address and the contact hours. You are more than welcome to contact me for any assistance. You can send me an email or send me a message during any time of the day, but please note that I will only be able to respond to calls or answer your emails or text messages during these specific hours as they are given here. Just some general notes for you in order to prepare for this subject. Remember that to fully grasp the content and the subject, you need to go over your entire study guide. In your study guide, there's the specific learning outcomes and learning activities. Please read through them, work through them. This will give you a good concept of what information is important at the end of the day. And then, of course, you can use this presentation, which is quite a brief summary of all the information in the study guide. Just important to note that you cannot just use the information in this study guide alone. You need to go on this presentation alone. You need to go back to your study guide and make your own summaries and add some information. It's only when you put the things in your own words and read through it so that you fully understand it. If you only use the information as it is here, you might not get full marks and you might not understand it as well. So when you are doing an assignment or writing an examination, please answer all of the questions. By making an effort with each question, it means that you have the opportunity to gain marks. Even if you don't answer everything 100%, there's the possibility to get some marks. It's important to also look at the marks that's in a question. If a question counts 4 marks, but you know for a fact there's 6 marks in the study guide, do not give the 6 marks, as you will only be receiving the 4 marks. Even if your first 4 answers are incorrect and the last 2 are correct, you will still not get the marks because we mark them according to how you write, and if we ask for 4 facts, we mark the first 4 facts as they are given. So if you are asked to briefly describe something or list something and you write books of paragraphs, we will not go finding facts within your answers. Your facts need to be very clear. Then it's important to read your questions and search for verbs. So in your study guide in the front, there's a whole list of verbs given. Verbs are words such as explain, define, describe, discuss, argue, compare, contrast. It's important to look for the verb because that tells you what we expect of you. If you are asked to explain something, describe, define, discuss, use full sentences, not just bullet points. So you'll see in this presentation, a lot of the information is put in bullet point format. So it's listed. But if asked to explain or discuss something, it will not be sufficient for you to list the items. In fact, in an examination, when you are asked to discuss something and you list them in bullet point, it will not be marked because that's not what the verb asks of you. So we start with study unit 1, which is the reading process for adolescents and children. You have 5 stages in the reading process. You need to be able to name these 5 stages. As there are stages in a reading process, please take note of the way that they follow each other. So it's important to note that children go through developing word attack skills, then comprehension, then evaluation, application and retention, ending with fluency. So if asked to give the stages of the reading process, try to get them in this order, as this indicates that you understand the process behind it. Otherwise, if you just randomly put down the different stages, it's not a reading process anymore. Then, the statement that reading is a complex developmental process is something that you will be asked to either discuss or say whether, what does it mean? What do we mean with the statement, it's a complex developmental process? It's important to note here the word developmental process. So it's not just about the fact that reading is a process, it's a developmental process. So as children learn to walk and talk, they learn to read as well. So they almost grow in their reading as they grow and develop as a child. You can say it the same way. So please make your summary of what does this statement mean when we say it's a complex developmental process. Then we have 3 different theories or models of the reading process. The first is the bottom-up reading process model. The second is the top-down theory of reading. And your third is the interactive reading model. You need to be able to discuss each of these as a model on its own, but you might also be asked to compare 2 of these different ones with each other. For instance, you might be asked to compare or indicate how the bottom-up theory is different and similar to the top-down theory. So when asked to compare 2 different things, it doesn't mean that we are only looking for differences, but there might also be similarities between 2 concepts. Then we have certain things that good readers do. You need to be able to list these things as they are stated here. So we have 7 things that good readers do on the first slide, and then more on the next slide. So as I said, it's important that you are able to list these things. And then you will see at the bottom of the slide, it says that good readers also use before, during, and after strategies when reading. So this is different from what good readers do. This is specific strategies that they use before they read, while they're reading, and after they've read. It's important to also look at that in your study guide. Then struggling adolescents have specific characteristics. There are in your study guide quite a few characteristics listed. These are only a few of them. It's not important for you to know the entire list, but it's important that you know that you are able to list quite a few of them. Then we have 6 different factors that influence a child's learning to read. This is the parent factor and adolescent literature, the income factor, the community factor, early learning factor, and the teacher factor. So these are things that play a role on how children learn to read. It's important that you are able to discuss these, not just list them as they are listed here, but to discuss them. So when we say there's a parent factor that influences a child's learning to read, what do we mean by that? What role does the parent play in a child learning to read? What role, for instance, does the teacher play in a child learning to read? Then there are various ways to create a reading culture in schools. As you will see, there are quite a few listed. It's an entire long list. It's important that you are able to list a few of these, but also to describe them. So for instance, if we say, try footprints to the library, what does that mean? So you need to be able to list that as a fact, but also say, so it means putting down little pictures of feet all the way from a classroom to the library. Then if we move into study unit 2, we will see that there are 7 basic themes in adolescent literature. So this is different from genres in literature. These are the 7 different themes that you find. You have slaying the monster, rags to riches, the quest, voyage and return, comedy, tragedy, and rebirth. You need to be able to list these 7 themes in adolescent literature. It is important that adolescent learners are motivated to read. As with many things in life, motivation is key. If a child is not motivated to read, they will not practice it. And in that way, they will not be able to become fluent readers who understand what they are reading. So you need to be able to discuss this concept of motivating adolescent learners to read. Then there are specific tips for motivating them, as you will see. For instance, offering learners a choice of reading material, frequently and explicitly modeling reading. So a teacher or parents showing a child that they read, and therefore the child would also want to partake in this activity because it looks like fun. So there are specific things that parents can do, specific things that teachers can do. You need to be able to give through some tips for motivating learners to read. There is quite a long list, so be able to name a few. Then there are 4 different types of reading, and each of these types of reading have a purpose. We have intensive reading, extensive reading, skimming, and scanning. So generally speaking, your skimming and scanning is for getting, you are very briefly going into the reading process, and you are more looking for specific information. Whereas intensive and extensive reading has a bit more focus to it. It's more time consuming. So with intensive reading, it's more focused. You are looking for specific facts. You are reading more than one book, for instance. Whereas extensive reading, it's a more reading for pleasure, more a fluent type of a reading. So here you will see, as with the previous one where I said there's 7 different themes, here now we have different genres of adolescent literature. So for instance, adventure literature, classic novels, fantasies, mysteries, science fiction. So you need to be able to name the specific genre, but also to give a description of the genre. So what do we mean by a graphic novel? What do we mean by a romance? You need to be able to explain what it is. Then children's literature has a role that it plays in developing specific areas of children as they grow and develop. The first being moral values. But then we also have effects on their gender or identity. So what impact literature has on how they view gender and identity. And then also how they understand themselves. So that's the third one. So if we go back, the first one is how does it impact moral values? So the specific literature that children read, what impact does it have on how their moral values develop? Does it, for instance, show them how a character would handle a situation? So in that way, teaching them how can they handle certain situations that come up in their life. So you need to go through your paragraphs in the study guide and take out with each of these moral values. As you see, there's quite a few things similar with gender identity and also how to understand themselves. You need to go into your study guide and take out the most important facts, as it's quite a bulky section of the study guide. So lots of information. In the slides, it's very very much summarized, so only the most important facts have been taken out. Then we also see here suggestions. So after the section that deals with the impact that literature has on children's gender and gender identity, it also says suggestions for avoiding gender bias in literature. So it doesn't help that learners are being impacted by literature when it comes to gender and gender identity, but then the books are very biased. So it states that girls can only do specific things, boys only do specific things, girls should act in a specific way, boys should act in a specific way. Here are some suggestions for how can you avoid books that are gender biased, so that leans more towards one than the other. Then there is a section about how reading multicultural literature benefits teenagers. So when we say multicultural literature, it means that children read literature that deals with a variety of cultures, not just their own culture. So they learn through reading this literature how to deal with and understand and respect other people's cultures. So that is the benefits that it has if they read about various cultures and not just about their own culture, and also not just about specific cultures in their country, but different cultures around the world. So in that way, getting facts about, even if they travel somewhere, how can you then treat those people with respect? Then there's specific requirements to look at when selecting quality works, so quality literature for your adolescents. It's important for you to be able to list what are these specific requirements, such as that the author is well respected in the literature community. The reason being that you do not want to give adolescents literature that is of a poor standard. You want to give them the best quality that they can have so that they enjoy what they are reading. Then if we move on to study unit 3, there are different reading readiness activities. So for instance, you have your visual perception activities, visual discrimination, form constancy, but you also have visual memory, sequential memory, visual spatial relations, and figure ground. Each of these activities play an important part in how children go into the reading process. So it's important that they have these activities well under the belt. So it's important that you are able to describe each of these activities. So for instance, visual memory, you need to be able to say what it is, so it reflects a learner's ability to store visual details, so what has been seen in their short-term memory. Then you also need to be aware of the fact that in your study guide, it also tells you what specific activities can be done to strengthen these reading readiness activities. So if we look at visual memory, what activities can a teacher do in class so that a child's visual memory is strengthened? So don't just be able to list the activities, be able to describe them, and also be able to give activities for strengthening them. Then we look at multimodal text. So what are multimodal text? You need to be able to clearly define the concept. So if we look at the word multimodal, multi means more than one, and mode. So modal is the mode, or types of text. So we have more than one type of text. This is, for instance, if you have a written paragraph that goes hand in hand with pictures. So learners can then put these two together. They work in unison. You have information in the form of text, but the picture also gives specific information, and these two work together. And it's important because different learners learn also in different ways. So this is, for instance, why it's important for using multimodal text in a classroom, because the world is changing and children are being they are being taught information through different ways. So they are being exposed to different ways of learning. You have television these days, you have YouTube channels, you have textbooks, you have the teacher in class stating facts, you have some people even put information in the form of a song. So all of these work together and make it easier for children to learn, because not all children learn in the same way. Some children are maybe not as exposed to technology as others are. So that is why you still have your classic forms such as written text and pictures in a textbook, for instance. Then when a teacher reads to children, it is important that they have specific skills that they implement. There's rate, tone, pitch, volume, expression, and also character voices. So when reading aloud to children, it's important to take note of these specific skills. If a teacher is just reading at one constant speed, or talking in the same pitch and the same tone, it becomes very monotonous for the children and they lose interest in what is being read. So that is why it's important to practice these skills and bring it into each of the stories that's being read aloud. Something as simple as the character voices. Children want they want to live themselves into the story. So by using different character voices, they create this picture in their mind of what is happening. Then there's reading instruction for early readers, and also reading instruction for adolescent readers. So these are two different reading instruction, and it's important that you note the difference between the two. Early readers, your reading instruction will focus mostly on phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Whereas with your adolescent reader, your reading instruction is focused on word study, because remember, your adolescent reader has already gone through the basics of learning how to read. Now they are at an advanced level. So you focus on word study, once again fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, and mostly important, motivation for reading. An adolescent reader is sometimes less motivated because the concept of reading is not a new interesting concept anymore. So these 5 points of reading instruction for adolescent readers is known as the 5-point program. So when asked in an assignment or examination paper, discuss the 5 points of the 5-point program, this is what it refers to. You discuss your word study, your fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, and motivation. Then there are specific activities that can be done with the learners who struggle to read. So as you see, there's quite a few that's listed. Stuff like break the ice. So it's a sort of a game that can be played. You have dictionary words, vocabulary on the move, reduce the text, matching, text quiz. So these are different activities that can be done in a classroom to assist a reader who struggles to read. Often through implementing a game, it's just easier for children to learn how to read. Then there are specific ways in which our comprehension skills can be enhanced for adolescent learners. These are question-answer relationship technique, pair rehearsals. So you need to be able to list these and discuss them. What is the question-answer relationship? how does that improve comprehension? So how does it improve understanding of specific text? How does pair rehearsal improve this understanding of words and text? Then, allowing struggling readers to choose their own books to read is a way of motivating them. So this specific statement might be asked in different ways in the assignment or examination. You might be asked just to basically discuss the statement. You might be asked to argue the statement. If asked to argue the statement, for instance, it's important that you say, because these are now listed in number 4, but you need to put them in full sentences and paragraphs. And something like that says, a question that says argue something means please add your own view. So for instance, do you believe that if a teacher allows a struggling learner to choose their own material to read, do you think that that makes a difference for them? Or does it not make a difference? Will it enable them to become better readers or not? So it's important to include your own opinion of the statement. Then there are specific strategies that learners can be taught to be independent readers. These are, for instance, clarifying, comparing and contrasting, connecting to prior experience that they've had, summarizing, predicting, inferring, and so it goes on. You need to be able to list these strategies, but also what does it mean? So describe how does the strategy of clarifying help a child to be an independent reader at the end of the day. Then ways to improve reading retention. So earlier we had the comprehension, so understanding. But now we need to look at how do we improve a reader's reading retention, so keeping information. The first is that learners need to learn how to comprehend and retain through explicit and varied teaching. But then there's also other reading comprehension strategies that will lead to retention of information. So please be able to, in this sense, to be able to list but also describe these ways. Then it's important to have a specific corner of your classroom that is just there for reading. So a reading corner, something that's inviting, that motivates children to sit down, grab a book, relax, and just read. If you are asked in a question to describe a reading corner or discuss how you would set up a reading corner, please do not just list items that you would put there. Do not just say there will be old furniture or there will be a carpet. Elaborate on those. Why would there be a carpet? I would put a carpet so that the children can lie down and read. I would put furniture there so that children sit comfortably and read their books. To make the space inviting. So unless you are asked to list items found in a reading corner, please write nice full sentences and paragraphs about what this reading corner would look like, what one would find there. Then we have specific features of an effective reading program. You will see that there's a whole list of items given here. You need to be able to list them and then also talk about them further. There are two different types of books these days. In the previous years, you would go to a library, you take a book from the shelf, and that's what you had. You had an actual book that you could hold. But these days we have ebooks and we have e-readers. So books can be carried around, a whole bunch of them on one device. So here we look at the advantages of using ebooks compared to using your conventional books. So the book that you would go to the library and you would have to carry around with you. So here you have it listed very, very briefly. But if you are asked in the assignment or examination, to discuss or describe or explain the advantages of using ebooks. Please do not just list them as they are put here, but elaborate on what it means. If you say note-taking and highlighting abilities, do not just list those, but say with an e-reader you can easily take notes on the sidelines, and you also have a highlighting tool where you can highlight the most important facts within these books. Then our last study unit is study unit 4, which deals with assessments. So how do we assess whether a child has, throughout the entire year, actually mastered the skill of reading or be taught ways to deal with things, but also how can they be supported by a teacher. So the first, we have the purpose of assessment. There are 3 reasons we would do assessments: so that the learner gets information, so that the parents get information, and so that the teacher can get information in the sense of evaluating the learning process. So what they would need to do, maybe something that needs to change. So please be able to describe these purposes of why we would do assessments. Then we also have types of assessments: formative, continuous, and summative. You need to be able to describe each of these types of assessment, so list them and describe them. And then we have methods of assessment. So these are 3 different items that you should please not get confused by. We have purpose of assessment, types of assessment, and methods. So your types is the different kinds that you would apply, but your method is how you would apply this assessment, through either an informal way, a formal way, or a criterion referenced. You need to be able to list as well as describe these different methods. Then there are common reading problems specifically found in our country. You need to be able to give these specific these common reading problems. For instance, that there's an incorrect approach to reading, that there's poor phonemic awareness, that there's choppy sounding out. So please be able to list a couple of these common reading problems. Then we have the section about standardized test. Firstly, you need to be able to describe what is a standardized test, but you also need to describe the most common forms, the 3 most common forms of standardized test. Then we have different types of support that could be given to learners that have different reading difficulties. You have teaching the essential skills and strategies, providing differentiated instruction, providing explicit and systematic instruction, providing opportunities to apply your skills and strategies, and to not just cover the critical content. So you need to be able to elaborate what does this mean. So not just to list, teach essential skills and strategy, but what does it mean and would a teacher do that? Then a very important thing for learners when it comes to reading is improving the struggling reader's self-esteem. If they have a good self-esteem, they would struggle less with reading. So you need to be able to give through a few ways that a teacher can use to improve a struggling reader's self-esteem. So as you can see, there's quite a couple. Please be able to list a few and describe them as well. So don't just say show patience, but describe how does that lead actually to an improved self-esteem. Then we have literature circles. In this case, you need to be able to define or explain what is a literature circle, but also why would we use literature circles. There are 4 reasons. You need to be able to give through all 4 of the reasons as to why you would use your literature circles. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. You can use this presentation to prepare for your assignment and examination, but as stated in the beginning, please go through the entire study guide, look through the information, read the paragraphs, make your own summaries so that the information is in your own words and so that you understand it. And if you have any difficulties or struggles or questions, please feel free to contact me. That is why I'm here as your tutor, is to assist you so that you will be able to pass your assignment and pass your examination. Thank you and good luck for 2022.